Hello, everyone out there in radio land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. Uh, you can also find us online at Media Cyphers on Facebook, YouTube, and the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. As always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 WIDR or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may turn out to be. Again, this is a weekly program where we come onto your radio dial and we tell y'all what is really going on here in the city of Kalamazoo, the state of Michigan, the so-called United States, and the rest of the world from a working class perspective, breaking down the issues, working class struggle, the mainstream media, and generally calling out the BS. As always, got a lot on the program. Welcome back. Students got a week off between spring and summer. Some of you are gone. Some of you are back to study during the summer. Doesn't quite feel like summer. Still jacket and hoodie weather out here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. But yeah, I know y'all are back at school, and we've got a lot to talk about on the show, as we always do. Going to be focusing on a few local issues here in a bit. I think I want to start with a couple of statewide stories. I know typically we start at what's going on here in Kalamazoo. I'm going to save that for just a little bit later to kind of talk about. There's some kind of downstream implications of the big BS bill that passed last year, and we did a lot of extensive coverage on that, telling y'all a lot about the type of fallout we would be experiencing here in Kalamazoo and in the state of Michigan. But um, very important to realize a lot of Western students come here from kind of the outlying satellite rural areas around Kalamazoo, and this is something that it's kind of very predictable from what the big BS bill did, and it's something that is going to put even more of a financial strain on our already very broken healthcare system. It's an article from Justin A. Hinckley that really kind of games out the implications of defunding so many of Michigan's rural health clinics and hospitals. It's published on May 7th. Rural Michigan may need more medical helicopters. Can it afford them? Colliding federal policies mean more rural Michiganders may soon need medical helicopter rides. At the same time, there's less money to pay for those trips. President Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Act, which became law last year, funds tax cuts and an immigration crackdown in part by cutting Medicaid. Experts say that'll disproportionately hurt rural hospitals whose communities tend to be poorer and rely more on the federal health insurance program. So, just to break down, again, especially you're talking a lot of these rural areas. These are the places that voted for Trump. These are the places you drive by on the highway have the big, Trump 2024, 2028 signs. And he's really, again, he's hurting his own base, or the base hurt itself in its confusion in this case, but with these cuts. And as we've talked a lot on the program, one of the reasons healthcare costs in the United States are so high is because of the lack of a universal healthcare system. You call it Medicare for all or whatever you want to use. Because of that, people are hesitant to go to the doctor for routine health upkeep or low risk injuries. So those healthcare issues continue to accelerate, exacerbate, get worse over time until people need emergency care. Because there aren't these rural health clinics are being cut back. There's even less incentive for people in these rural areas to get routine checkups. It's one thing when your rural health clinic is a 10, 20, 30-minute drive. It's another when you have to drive 90 minutes to the nearest healthcare facility, especially with these types of gas prices we have because of Operation Epic Epstein Fury or whatever the administration wants to call it in Iran. So you're left in a situation where people are ignoring their healthcare needs because of the increased costs of transporting themselves to and from routine healthcare appointments. Many people don't even have healthcare insurance in the first place, so they avoid it to begin with, which creates this vicious cycle where they can't afford to get routine checkups, so they wait until the problem is so bad that they need to go to a trip to the ER. Well, what happens when the nearest hospital is 2, 3, 4 hours away? They need these helicopters become necessary to transport those people, and because of the lack of rural health facilities, the need for this sort of emergency aerial transportation is going to increase. I'm going to keep reading from the article here. Experts say that will mean fewer services at rural hospitals that already send hundreds of patients a year to bigger facilities for critical care. When time is of the essence, those transfers happen via helicopter rides that can cost tens of thousands of dollars per trip. At the same time, 2022's federal No Surprises Act prohibits air ambulance firms from charging patients more than what insurance companies are willing to pay. That's saving patients thousands of dollars, but straining firms who are often already fly at a financial loss. There are going to certainly be cuts to local community services at rural hospitals, said Lorene Lepin Ray, Vice President of Policy and Rural Health and Executive Director of the Center of Rural Excellence at the Michigan Health and Hospital Association. If we already have a strained transportation system, it becomes challenging to think about what that could look like from an access standpoint. Michigan has received $173 million from a $50 billion federal program to prop up rural health care. But Medicaid cuts are expected to cost Michigan's hospitals a combined $6 billion over the next decade. From 2021 to 2023, the last year Michigan tracked air ambulance services, 11 firms flew a combined average of 3,300 patients a year. More than 8 in 10 of those rides were interfacility transfers, usually flights from rural hospitals in places like Alpena or Monroe to bigger hospitals such as the University of Michigan Hospital in Ann Arbor or the Corewell Health Facility in Grand Rapids. Helicopter rides happen when patients have serious illnesses, such as strokes or cardiac events, for which their local hospital lacks the specialist, equipment, or other resources to treat. Specially trained nurses and paramedics ride with patients to provide care during the flight. These are not routine transports. They are used when every minute matters and faster access to specialized care can improve outcomes. Mike Erickson, market president at the My Michigan Medical Centers in Alpena, Saginaw, Standish, Tawas, and West Branch, said in a statement to Bridge, Michigan. A 2019 federal study pegged the average cost around $40,000, where other estimates say a longer trip can cost as much as $100,000. Prior to 2022, whatever wasn't covered by insurance was often passed on to the patients, a practice known as balance billing, sometimes to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into kind of how this exposes the fissures and dysfunction of our healthcare system. But I want you to really kind of think about this. You or a loved one has a heart attack. You're out out in the boonies. You have to have a helicopter ride to get the care you need. You get a bill for 10 grand. That's for most people, that's like a third of between like a fifth to a third of your yearly income. And if you're living on a fixed income, that becomes it's an absolute joke to even think that you'll be able to chip away at a bill going into the tens of thousands of dollars. So back in 2022, going back to the article, Congress passed the No Surprises Act and forbid balance billing in most cases. The law set up an arbitration process through which insurers and air ambulance companies could negotiate the cost, a lengthy process that can delay payments to the air ambulance companies by a year or more. I want you to really think about this the relationship between air ambulance services and insurance companies. I'm going to come back to that later, but really start thinking about that as I'm reading more on the article. That's fine for air ambulance services that are part of larger medical systems, said Donna Robinson, clinical nursing director of critical care transport at Michigan Medicine. Smaller operations may not be able to absorb the hit, she said. At the same time, changes stemming from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act are likely to reduce services at 15 Michigan hospitals in coming years, according to a January report from the Center for Healthcare Quality and Payment Reform. Another 9 are at risk of closure, and 3 at immediate risk of closure. The report didn't identify which hospitals are most at risk, but a March report from Public Citizen listed a dozen Michigan hospitals, from Detroit and Flint to Dowagiac and Iron River, at risk of closure. The proposed changes would likely put added strain on access to care across the board, including air medical services, by increasing the number of uninsured patients and reducing reimbursement for Medicaid, said Erickson of My Michigan. That combination creates financial pressure on hospitals and transport providers alike. Hospitals would likely first cancel the most expensive services for which they see the fewest patients, such as birthing services and inpatient psychiatric care, said Lapine Ray of Health and Hospital Association. Which, by the way, that's just dire to begin with. Let's be very clear there. Birthing services, psychiatric care, these are essential needs for a community, and to have them cut because of the big BS bill is, again, it's tragic, and every working class person in this country should just be stark raving angry about this. Going on, the fewer services a hospital offers, the more likely patients will need to be transferred to bigger facilities. Ground transport often isn't possible in many rural areas. Only one ambulance patrols at any given time and is required to stay in the county in case it's needed there. Plus, ambulances already face severe shortages of paramedics and emergency medical technicians. Sheriffs are sometimes called upon to transport patients, but they face their own shortages and aren't trained to handle most care en route. I'm going to go down a little bit further in the article, or actually, no, that's about it. Um, so if you want to read that for yourself, that's Justin A. Hinckley. Rural Michigan may need more medical helicopters. Can it afford them? That was published on May 7th. So we talked about a few very obvious problems here. One is like this is the result of cutting Medicaid and healthcare funding. These are the kinds of services that get chipped away at, and also, it makes healthcare more expensive because, as I pointed out earlier, when people can't get routine medical care, they have to wait till it's an emergency. And in the case of the folks here in the rural areas, you're talking about an emergency that could rack up thousands of dollars in helicopter transport bills. Now, let's talk a little bit more about this arbitration that goes on between the helicopter agencies and the insurance companies. I'm going to be, again, beating a dead horse here if you're a longtime listener, but in most other countries on planet Earth, there is no such thing as arbitration between insurance companies and medical transport. The government pays for a universal healthcare system with our tax money. Medical transport, be it helicopter, ambulance, whatever else, is covered in that. America is one of the few countries on planet Earth that does not have that. And because these medical transport companies they have to function as for-profit companies. They have to pay attention to their own bottom line. It is their ability to turn a profit is dependent on them being able to provide services. It is ridiculous. It is a system that is designed to line the pockets of insurance executives rather than provide provide people with the necessary care that they need. And here's a question: if these medical helicopter agencies go bankrupt in these smaller areas, what's going to happen? More people are going to die. People are not going to reach the hospital in time. You are going to see a huge increase in preventable deaths. And there is no reason for it. There is no excuse for it. And it's even more sickening to think that, again, this siphoning off of what was already a very threadbare social safety net here in the United States is again funneling our money that could be used for healthcare to fund the surveillance state and ICE and things of that nature. Again, it's sad, it's ridiculous, And it's also why, when we have guests on to talk about Medicare for all, or we talk about politicians who, that's their position, that really needs to be the floor. And, yes, it's true. The American empire might be going towards some form of collapse. And we always talk about the need for a people's revolution in this country. But we can prevent a lot of misery and a lot of death by trying to get a healthcare system that makes sense, something that is at least on par with the rest of the world. So, again, those are our kind of 2 cents on that. You can read the article for yourself. Again, that's at Bridge, Michigan. Keep your dial locked. Y'all are listening to Media Ciphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us online at Media Ciphers on Facebook, YouTube, and the Media Ciphers Kalamazoo podcast you can find on most podcasting apps. Keep your dial locked. This is Media Ciphers, your source for political revolution. Hello, everybody. We are back. Y'all are listening to Media Ciphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. Joined by my co host, Lawrence. Lawrence, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, thanks. It's a good day. Kind of chilly for me, but it's my today's my one day off this week, so I was working a lot all the time. I had to buy a new car and all other stuff. Adulting. Who needs it?
You're adulting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. Um, man,
Mhm.
uh, doing a little, watching my sports, man. I ain't gonna lie. I was happy to see the Pistons do their thing, right?
Mhm.
Pistons. Well, I'm happy when any Midwest team does well. Like, I think that I like my rule of thumb is it's Michigan versus everybody.
Mhm.
And then when it's not Detroit or Michigan, or like when it's not a Michigan team, or Detroit versus everybody, then it's Midwest versus everybody. Like, what I'm
Mhm.
saying, whatever Midwest team is in the finals. So you got Cavs and you got Detroit playing against each other right now, and that's a
Mhm.
pretty good series.
Yeah.
Uh, New York, Jesus, New York is looking scary right now.
Mm.
The Knicks is looking terrifying. And
Yeah.
also, we might have saw LeBron James last game, bro. And I don't know how I
Oh
feel.
yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it, man.
Mm.
It's one of those things where I'm sitting there. I was like, oh, I wanted for the storyline, for the plot. I wanted to see LeBron James win a ring with his son, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like I that would have been dope for the storyline.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't think that's gonna happen, but it would have been cool.
Yeah, I also give a shout out to the Tigers. Tigers took Kansas City to the Cleaners over the
Yeah,
weekend. That was delightful. I was watching that with my. We were celebrating Mother's Day. My dad and my brother. So the show listeners, my mom passed a couple years ago, but we ate her favorite food and swapped some stories. And as I mentioned, watched the Tigers give the Kansas City a whooping. It's nice to see. Actually, it was really funny. I bumped into somebody at a Growlers game about a year ago, and they said something like, "I didn't expect to see you here." It's like I don't know. Sometimes I feel like people have the impression that's like it's like I just spend all of my free time in like socialist literature. It's like I do have hobbies, y'all. I do. It's like I do. Oh man.
I, I get it, man. I get it. Yeah,
Mhm.
it happens, man. Like we have to remind people that we're not just outside of being political junkies. Like we are very large political junkies, but you have to clean your palate once in a while. And yes, cleaning your palate once in a
Yeah.
while is engaging. That's
Yeah.
actually part of one of the stories that we want to bring up. Um, there's been conversation that started. Okay, so my quick hit before we get into real stories. There was a meme that was a fake meme that has now become a real discussion, right? The fake meme was that there was an NFL player that said uh, black black student athletes should not go to SEC schools. And for those who do not know about the SEC colleges, that's all of the Confederates, all of the Southern Belt. So that's Texas, Florida, Louisiana, Georgia, Tennessee. You know, all the Confederate states, all the states that are conveniently disenfranchising black voters. People are now having. I've seen D.L. Hughley have this conversation. I've seen Joy Reid and others talk about this conversation. And one of the ways of fighting back, and we're going to get into other ways of fighting back that the Democratic Party has actually done.
Mm-hmm.
People are saying we as students and parents of students should not allow their students to go to SEC colleges because those colleges are in states where they are disenfranchising black voters. This conversation started off as a joke or as a lie because it wasn't a real AI meme. It was an AI meme. I'm I'm torn on it as a real discussion when I've seen other people discuss it. Jamel Hill, shout out to Jamel Hill. You know, she graduated from, you know what I'm saying? She's from Michigan, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to Jamel Hill, a great journalist. She talked about it. And her commentary is kind of where I sit on it. If we want future students to say, hey, University of Texas, University of Alabama, University of Mississippi, Florida, and all those schools, right? We're not going to let you profit in football or baseball or in basketball because, as we know, college sports is a $1 billion industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. And a lot of that labor is predicated on the backs of black and brown people that they are choosing to disenfranchise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through the ruling of the Supreme Court. And those southern states are viciously taking away the voice and power of minorities, right? Why should why should you put your family's money into those colleges and help them generate billions of dollars in revenue? On the one hand, I agree with it. On the other hand, I think about Colin Kaepernick and I think about the NFL. And I think about what happened during that time. A lot of people was in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick, but a lot of people didn't stop watching the NFL. They were in solidarity with the protests, but they would still be watching the machine, still be putting money into the product, into the machine. And that's a misnomer. We can't be putting the burden on college students when we as the consumers are going to continue putting money into the SEC. If that was an actual plan or an actual plan that a plan of action, then everybody who's also in solidarity with that plan has to no longer participate in watching any of the SEC sports, not buying merch, not visiting their schools, not entertaining them, not just with the college athletes, but also just the regular students. Because, and also some of those same athletes and celebrities who are now professional athletes and celebrities, they need to speak out about it. Because if they're not, then it's not a real conversation. It's a fantasy. It's a good it's a decent strategy, but it's a fantasy,
You know,
right?
I gotta say there are things about what you just said that like they sound very exciting. I think like one of the big lessons from what happened to Colin Kaepernick is if you have just like one lone figure who becomes like the face of something and nobody else is really I mean, and not to say other people were taking a knee, but not to the extent that Colin did. It was It was a situation where it was much easier for the NFL to just blackball Colin Kaepernick and keep everybody else in line. Now, if you were to realistically do something like this, it's kind of this is kind of a take on capitalists will sometimes threaten something called capital flight, which is actually how we got the Foundation for Excellence. It's like we were going to do a progressive income tax 10 years ago, and the capitalists in Kalamazoo said, "Yo, you do this progressive income tax, we are going to leave capital flight." So they did the foundation instead, where just I'm not going to go into that big tax scam. We all talked about it to death. Anyway, but I say that to say this. That's a form of that. That's like basically a talent flight or talent strike. If you actually had a lot of like these college athletes saying, we are not going to play in states that are, resurrecting like Jim Crow. Um, that's the whole
John
thing.
Crow.
If you
John,
had, if it's one thing you can blackball an athlete, but you can't blackball a generation of athletes. And if you could get a critical mass of athletes to participate in this, college sports is big business. You could like this is some real leverage that young people could have over these states, and they're not easily replaceable. You can't just like go find somebody off the street who is at that level of athleticism and just like put a jersey on them and shove them onto the field. So it's possible you could do this, but it requires a lot of courage and a lot of very like rigorous and vigorous organizing. And what happens then is you start getting a lot of these college administrators and fans of these college teams. A lot of them have deep pockets, putting pressure on their politicians. They're like, let them have a seat in Memphis or Birmingham or whatever, because they're killing us. They are killing us with this talent strike. That's a possible future. That'd be really cool to see. But I think, like you said, it's got to be a lot of people, or it just wouldn't work.
yeah, it has to be. It has to be a. It reminds me. I thought about it in a very similar way of in the similar way of the boycott, the the Target boycott, right?
Hmm.
Um, I thought of it in that similar way where I'm like, yeah, I am for. I was when Nina Turner and others was like, no, we're boycotting Target because of their because of what they did with their DEI programs, right? And I'm like, yeah, same thing, same thing. But withholding funding, withholding money because of entertainment, because of college is one thing, and just withholding students who would want to go there is one thing. Um, but it needs to be a wraparound thing. It has to be all encompassing. It has to be people are not. That's why I said it has to be the adults of those families no longer watching those games. Uh, it has to be the people the athletes, the professional athletes that used to go to those colleges, being like, "Hey, yo, I'm publicly saying I'm no longer going to be donating money to these colleges. I'm in support of this protest, right?" Um, it needs to be a multi-layered approach on top of what the Democrats are doing too. Where some of the Democrats, like what we saw in Virginia and others, where they did a ballot referendum about gerrymandering, counter gerrymandering because of the redistricting that we saw in Texas and in Florida and other states. It has to be combined with that. It has to be all of those things to apply pressure. Because yeah, this is we're no longer going back to the Jim Crow South. This is John Roberts Crow. This is John Crow. It's not Jim Crow. This is John Crow. John
John
Roberts is
Crow. Yep.
John Roberts, and this is his Supreme Court. This is what they are doing. This is this is what he's been wanting ever since he was in his 20s. So yeah, we need to. It has to be a multi-layered approach, and if it's not, then we're just playing, and I'm not for the playing.
Yeah, it's time for games is over. I mean, it's kind of a pun, I guess. We talk about games, but say it.
Right, and we
Uh,
just got to talk about sports. Who I talk about
these,
sports.
these these games are going to be over until we get some voting rights back. How about that?
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of transition talk about a local story. I'm gonna read a little bit from this article, and then I think me and Lawrence are gonna kind of break down a few things. But you may have heard this is on both like M Live and WWT about the Wildwood apartment complex. And I'm going to kind of sum up what happened. We'll link to an article in the show notes, so you can kind of get a deeper. They interview a couple of the residents, and again, like actually talking with them firsthand. Gives a more human dimension to the story. But essentially, what happened? Um, there's 292 units at this apartment complex. It's over in Kalamazoo Township. And last week there was a bunch of orange condemned notices all over the building. Residents have reported hearing conflicting things from management, government officials, lawyers. And essentially, what it comes down to is the apartment complex is set up. There's a lot of like wooden balconies leading up to the various apartments. And they are deteriorating, they are rusting, pieces of them are coming off. The township inspector basically said, they're unsafe. Um, and the township inspector confirmed every wooden balcony in Ports is unsafe. You can actually go see some of the pictures on the M Live website. And, yeah, these balconies look jankety. Um, However, a lot of these residents don't really know where they're going to go. If it is technically illegal to be living where they're currently living, what's going to happen. It was Lake Forest Kalamazoo LLC currently owns the property. They bought it in 2021, according to property records, and it was built in the late 80s. It has 30 plus buildings. Um, and right now, basically, a lot of the residents are just wondering, like, what are we going to do? Because, the choice is like, most working people do not have the money and the time to just straight up find another place to live. We've gone over this a lot, and when we've done deeper dives into the rental situation here in Kalamazoo. But most places require a deposit. A lot of places in Kalamazoo require an application fee. These add up. And of course, it's traumatic having to just pick up and leave when a place is your home. But there's also the very real danger that you could be hanging out on one of these balconies or walking up the steps one day and it's just going to collapse under your feet. So we're in this situation for a couple of reasons. We have this apartment complex that is obviously they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They are not doing the necessary upkeep to their building that is going to keep their residents safe. Um, and we're, the, kind of zooming out, we are in this situation because, again, housing is a for-profit enterprise. Housing is a for-profit enterprise because, was it Kalamazoo Forest, or what's the name of the company? Lake Forest Kalamazoo LLC. Um, treats this as a profit extraction enterprise rather than a public service to make sure that people maintain their homes. They let their balconies deteriorate to the point that they're so dangerous that they get condemned by the township. um Lawrence, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. I have some more things too, but I don't want to just run on too long.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, okay. So I'm not gonna apply malice. Uh, like we always talk about it. Like we don't try to apply malice to stupidity, right? Like someone just being ignorant, right? But these tenants, I assume, have been living there for a very long time, for a while, right? Let's say let's say for bare minimum a year, right? For argument's sake. The people who own the building would have known about the conditions of the building. They would have probably have received complaints, have probably have received multiple service requests, right? But the landlords are choosing. And again, I want to go back to that idea. That's a choice to choose to not update your building. Are you saying that the residents that's been living there hasn't been paying their rent? Is Are you not generating enough money? Is there a reason why you have not been putting any effort into keeping the building viable for those that are living there? Or is it a cost benefit analysis that the owners of the building are just like, hey, it might be easier for us, and it may be more cost effective for us if we just let this place run down. And if that's the case, then that if that is the case, and again, I'm making assumptions here. How is that any different than the thing that's going on in New York when Zoran Mandani was talking about cracking down on bad landlords, landlords that care more about the profits that they're making than actually fixing the problems in the building where their tenants are living.
I'm glad you mentioned that because again, this is an example of this happening right in our backyard, but this is a national problem. This is again, bad landlords exist everywhere. Whether it's Wildwood is a good example right now, but again, like I've had situations. You talk about rickety stairs. I was renting under a private landlord in the Vine neighborhood about, oh gosh, this is 10, 13 years ago, and I had somebody. A stair collapsed while somebody was walking up that there to the second floor. And I'm not trying to throw too much shade on that particular landlord, but like that again, that's the thing that happens when you don't have regular upkeep to the properties that you own. And I want to kind of zoom back in a little bit. So I kind of talked about like, okay, so the main problem is that housing is for profit. Kind of, if you listen to the show, you already know this. But I think the bigger question is like, what can these residents do about it? And as somebody who's got a little bit of experience in this, organize. Getting organized, maybe starting a tenants union or having those conversations. These are some things that like are proven and shown. Unresponsive landlords will start responding if you get people together in numbers. This has been done across the country. It's been done right here in Kalamazoo. We interviewed some folks with the Pinehurst Tenants Union a while back. I have made the attempt to organize some tenants union stuff here in Kalamazoo. I'm not going to deep dive into that, but the one thing that was always our North Star was like getting committees organized under specific landlords or at specific apartment complexes, because these are successful models we've seen in places like LA, New York, Chicago, and even other like smaller cities comparable to Kalamazoo. Some of those concessions, and again, these are like working class areas, other working people. One example, and I forget the exact complex this was, but winning the concession, I think this was in an article from in these Times a couple issues back. But they talked about this apartment complex. They organized and they forced the landlord to basically pay for them all. They put them all up in hotels, motels, perhaps even Holiday Inns. In the time that it took to get everything fixed up and up to code. That seems to me like that would be like the bare minimum response this landlord can be up for. Of course, there's also other things you could do. A lot of these tenants, they can put their rent in escrow until the necessary repairs are made. Again, just like the conversation we were just having, that is most effective when it is a large organized group doing it. One person at a time can do it, but it is way more effective when you get like again a big organized group to do that sort of thing. And by the way, putting your rent aside in escrow that basically means you have the money to pay rent, you're setting aside. Um, you basically are showing legally you have the money to pay rent, but you are setting it aside until the repairs are made. There is also right to repair in Michigan, i.e., you can fix it yourself. That probably doesn't apply to this problem specifically. Unless they all want to pool their money together to get like some professional woodworkers out there. But those are just a couple of things that come to mind, just my experiencing, organizing around housing. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of successful models you can look at all over the country. I'll try to put some in the show notes.
No, I'm gonna be honest with you. If I'm paying rent for a property, and I've told the property manager, "Hey, we need this to be fixed," and I have to fix it myself, then I'm gonna be like, "Hey, yo, property manager, we need to talk about my rents, and we need to talk about my
Oh
rent
yeah,
coming down."
that's an important. Oh, I almost forgot to mention. Right to repair means you can repair it and then take the cost of that repair off of your rent. But yeah,
Oh
this is,
yeah, okay. I'm like, oh yeah, hey, uh, y'all gotta get, y'all gotta knock something off. I had to fix your property. Like, no, don't do that.
yeah. Yep, you're welcome. Yeah,
All right.
all right. So we'll link to that story in the show notes. And if there's any Wildwood residents listening to the show, if you need any resources, let me know. I think I feel like people in the community are crises like these happen. People in the community do reach out and try to start making connections and building something up. But yeah, it's important food for thought, especially if you're in that situation or a situation similar to it. So again, we'll link to that story in the show notes. Um, that again, that was the article I was referencing that was written by Brian Devereaux, published May 9th. Condemned residents fear what's next after apartment complex is deemed uninhabitable.
But
Um,
also, let's also be clear. This is happening at a time where gas is about to hit $6. Okay, this is at a time where food costs, your food cost has gone up, and the landlord is choosing at the worst time when people are struggling. People are being pinched right now, and the economy is only from if you look at any of the reputable economists, they're saying it's only going to get worse. And
yeah,
the landlord
absolutely.
and the landlord that these people are living under are just like, nah, dog, we don't need to repair. We don't need to repair. We don't need to repair what y'all doing. Where y'all stand. There's no need for that. Why would we? Like that's the insult here. That for me that would have been like, nah, dog, nah. We have a real issue. We have a real issue here, but nah, but yeah.
All right, so I think the next story I want to talk about, Southwest Michigan had a very special visitor on Saturday. Oh yeah,
This. I heard about this and I was like,
yeah.
oh god.
So 90 miles to the south east of us, is Hillsdale College, i.e., Mordor. Um, it's just actually no, it's a very nice looking campus, and I'm sure the
That's not
students are nice people. But that's also, as we talked about on the show, it's one of the big national right wing think tanks. A lot of Project 2025 was concocted just over that away. So it actually makes sense that they would invite Erika Kirk to come out as a commencement speaker. Um, so there was a protest there of about 60 people
hey, hey,
on Saturday. I
ask
think
you.
favorite sign is "Feed the poor, eat the rich." Turning Point USA is a cult. It's like, well, yeah. I don't want to talk too much about what Erika Kirk actually said, because well, one, I didn't really read her speech, but like you've read one of those speeches, you've read all of them. It's it's like F the woke, family values. I'm gonna fake, gonna make conjure up some tears about my husband. I don't think there were any fireworks to play displays at the graduation. But
I'm sure it was Erica or was it Drewski? Like, that we really need to know if it was either Erica or Drewski because if it was Drewski, I'm gonna be mad because I would have showed
Mhm.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man.
Uh,
So I think
okay,
it is
so
unusual. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Lawrence.
my thing is this. My issue is this. If Erica wants to continue to be in the public and choose to lend her voice, lend her voice to the cause of the right wing establishment, let her. She let her continue to speak. And the more she speaks, the more everyone will see that she's a tool, right?
Yeah.
I'm always we always talk about you don't I'm always happy to let bad face people speak because when you listen to them talk, you know that there's no there, right?
Hmm.
Um, and also honestly, and this is just me, just me, honestly. What honest critique of our society could Erica talk about with any type of confidence?
Yeah.
Like I didn't read her speech, and I say I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not going to. But every time I've seen her speak, she talks about we need to not apologize. We should not apologize for wanting strong men, especially strong white men. This is literally something she said, right? Um, she's talked about. Um, sorry, there's a lot of noise around me. She's made references, always referencing her husband and how her husband was a fighter for free speech. Yet he was a fighter for speech that was harmful and toxic to other human beings. This is a college. This college, in particular, or people who are like Erica, who like to uh, pretend that they are that or try to use Christianity to help push their backwards beliefs. The Christ that they are talking about, they would not let into the country. The Christ that in Matthew that talked about the sheep from the lamb, that talked about, hey, when I was a stranger in a strange land, you healed me when I was sick. You sheltered me when I was homeless. You clothed me when I was naked. When I was in jail, you didn't forget about me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was sick, you healed me. These are all the policies that if you're a follower of Christ, you would do. Everything that I just said, Erica and Turning Point USA is against.
Hmm.
How? Why? Why would I want to? Why would anyone want to listen to this woman, to this unremarkable woman who is only in the news media because she married a man that was a bigot and a racist?
Literally. Yeah.
Or maybe I'm tripping. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm tripping.
I don't, I think you're pretty steady there, Lawrence. You're on some pretty solid footing, I would say. Um, yeah, and I'd say, it's Erika Kirk doing a speech at Hillsdale College. All it really does is I think it highlights to people who maybe were not familiar with Hillsdale College, like this is what this type of school does. It's what it stands for. It exposes, where these kind of ideas come from. So, in that sense, Erika Kirk did us a little bit of a favor. And I think too, something there was an interesting follow-up article I talked about. So it stormed later in that day. and lightning hit a tree right by where the protests were taking place. And the article itself actually is a little bit more balanced. It basically, and honestly, kind of, it's, in my opinion, it shows like the protesters making some very cohesive points, while the other side, we're basically talking about the divine providence of, like, God was looking out for, like, the headline is literally lightning struck the site of an Erika Kirk protest. Charlie is keeping an eye out for us. Oh, and it's really funny to, like, again, these people espousing bigoted, hateful views that are against any of the teachings in the Bible. Trying to use this weather coincidence to say it's like God is on our side. Oh, like, obviously it's. I think what it does, the article. I'm a little of two ways about it. I think it's a little bit. It's almost National Enquirer-esque to come at it from that angle, but the article itself is a little bit more balanced. Um, my own 2 cents about it, you know it, like, you're trying to read into weather as like a cosmological event. That's a fool's errand. I could look at the same event and say, like, oh, lightning struck right near the Erika Kirk protest. So in my opinion, I think God was joining the protest, and he was essentially giving you the finger. But it's it's like, obviously, like, that's just as nonsensical as, like, trying to attribute it as a defense of Charlie Kirk. But yeah.
Wait. A lightning bolt struck Hillsdale. God was trying to warn them to stop being fascist.
Hmm.
But
There
God
you
was,
go. Yeah.
God God was on the side of the protesters saying, "Hey, y'all, maybe y'all should stop being fascist.
Maybe.
Can
Yeah.
we stop being fascist for a day?
Yeah.
Huh?"
It's like, look, I mean, yeah, I'm very, like, I'm Christian, but I'm very practical about stuff. But there have been some recent stuff that makes me wonder, like, some of that Old Testament energy coming back. I don't know if you read that story from a couple weeks ago where the IDF was getting attacked by swarms of bees. It's just like,
Oh yeah, I know that. Yeah, yeah, that's
sound,
God. That's God
yeah,
talking. No,
yeah,
God talking.
that
God was
sounds, yeah.
hey,
That's some curses of Egypt energy.
hey, uh, no, I it, it bothers me what I'm saying, also as a Christian, it bothers me when I see people like Erica use our religion to push the backwards ideology that they uh, uh, expose, that they use. They are using our religion in every way that harms us, right? You should know a tree by the fruit of its labor, right? You should know what Turning Point is about by the people that came out of that organization. You had Charlie Kirk, you had Charlie Kirk, you had Candace Owens, and you had the dude that co-founded it with him. The dude that co-founded it with him was anti-vaccine. He died from COVID.
Oh, what do you
Charlie,
say? Like to say, look at God. What do you say?
right?
Yeah,
Hey, in black tradition, look at God. Won't he do it? Won't they
yeah.
do it? Won't they do it? Charlie, excuse gun violence in this country. Always tried to use it as a weapon to bludgeon minorities and people of color. And how did Charlie die? He died at a white school by a white gunman on a campus where he was trying to equate gun violence in this country to minorities. And it was a white right wing graper who was tied to Nick Fuentes, tied to Nazis. That was tied to Nazis that shot him. You have Erica. I I don't want, again, as a Christian, I don't want anything bad to happen to that woman. I don't want anything bad to happen to that woman and her children. I would I would like for her to stop. I would like for her to look at the things that her husband said and then explain to everyone how these things are okay or how these things or how do or do you believe these things? Do you stand by these things? Do you believe that Martin Luther King doesn't deserve a holiday and that the Civil Rights Act was the worst thing that happened in this country? Do you believe that when you see minorities or black women in roles of authority like a pilot or something, that they are unqualified? Do you believe that people of color are not as smart, and these are things that Charlie has said are not as smart as others? Do you believe these things? If you don't, then speak on the fact that, hey, some of the things that my husband has said was absolutely hyperbolic and absolutely ratchet, and I don't believe it. But if you do, then stand on that. Stand 10 toes on it. Say it with your chest. If you do that, I will respect you more. But she doesn't. She tries to hide her hand. She
Yeah.
tries to hide a lot of her speeches, and that's the thing that makes me the most upset. So I'm like, oh,
I
you
think
want the
too, I want to talk a little bit about just the insidiousness of, and we talked a little bit about this when we were doing our Charlie Kirk analysis, but the whole taking God's name in vain, which a lot like a popular misconception is like that's not just saying like "gee damn it" or whatever. It's when you invoke the Lord to basically do sinful or hateful things, and that was basically Charlie Kirk's entire career. And to a large extent, that's what Erika Kirk's career is now.
now.
And one of the insidious things is the way the media doesn't emphasize like it's kind of like when you hide the pill in the peanut butter, or in this case, the poison pill, because Charlie Kirk, a lot of his career is doing a lot of this like Christian self-help stuff, which he would sandwich between all of this divisive and often like racist rhetoric. And I even like a lot of like low info people, it's like people, some folks in my family didn't know much about Charlie Kirk. I mean, he was never as famous as, the president or the people in the right wing media sphere think he was. But to even a lot of those low info people who were just getting their news from the mainstream media, it's like, well, wasn't he just a Christian just trying to like spread his ideas around? And that was probably the thing that just made me sickest at the time. Was like, no, he was he was not. He was not. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And it's yeah, again, it's disgraceful that people can like kind of put that on as a costume while like spreading around these hateful messages and deliberately trying to sheepdog people into these narratives where it's all the fault of it's all the fault of the poor, it's all the fault of the oppressed, all of the people that again Jesus stood up for. It's all of these people's fault. It's not the rich wealthy people taking you for a ride. And that's the legacy of people like Charlie and Erika Kirk, and that's the legacy of Hillsdale College. If there's any place in America that really represents the kind of like taking the Lord's name in vain, it's Hillsdale College, who purports to be this Christian college, and their whole legacy and administration is all about trying to whitewash the crimes of uh neoliberalism, of kind of like this conservative austerity orthodoxy, and again couching these hateful messages in Christian rhetoric, or Project 2025, which is like a direct assault on the poor. Again, being directly responsible for that.
Oh wait, and I want to tie that, and again, I want to tie that into this quick hit. I don't know if you saw it, but I don't like when the left fight leftist infighting, right? I don't like leftist infighting. But when it happens, I do monitor it. And there was a giant hubbub with AOC and Marjorie Green. I refuse to call her Marjorie Taylor Greene because she stole her entire style from AOC, right?
I don't think I actually heard about this. So please
So
enlighten.
so there was a big hubbub. She was interviewed by, I think, David Frum. I think it was one of President Obama's former strategists or whatever, right? I think it was David Sachs, David Frum was one of them. I don't remember which one. Um, but she was saying, look, uh, if people want to, um, if people want to praise people like Tucker Carlson or Marjorie or Candace because they're saying the right things on, or they're saying things on Gaza that they agree with, that's cool. But I don't trust them. They're We need to we need to check. You need to check people's resume. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Yep.
You can't put work on a block. You can't put work on a block with no resume. You need to check people's records, right? And she's like, look, I can't like just because now she's out of power and that she's choosing to say a few good things on Gaza now, that doesn't make her an ally. That doesn't make her an ally of mine. That shouldn't make her an ally. It's cool. She's doing that, right? And there was a lot of hubbub. There was people from all over the spectrum that saying, "Hey, we need to take the win," right? We have people who are on our side that agrees with us and take the win, right? And then there's others, and then you have people who are on the left. I'm not going to say names, so you can go and watch it, and you can go see it for yourself. Who are giving praise to Green more than AOC when AOC's record is far better on not just Gaza, but just policy in general in the Middle East than Green was when she was in the House of Representatives. Also, Green left. She left. She chose to leave, and she left because her daddy Donald didn't want to back her for higher office. He said no, and she got in her feelings.
The heat got too hot, and she bailed out of the kitchen,
So
basically.
now, so now, so now you want to come around and be like and uh have this moment, have this moment of saying, "Hey, I'm on y'all side. With Bibi Netanyahu and what they're doing is a genocide. I agree with y'all. Da. All this flowery talk that has nothing to do with actual liberation for Palestinians. It's just hate against Israel, and as we know, because Marjorie Green is a actual anti-Semite.
Yeah,
She in the Jewish space lasers. She believes in in uh um in the Great Replacement theory. These are all neo-Nazi, anti-Jewish ideologies. She is a
yeah,
true like
it's so silly because like a lot of these people think like, what, you think she just read a bunch of like theory from the PFLP, people's that's People's Front for the Liberation of Palestine. It was a Marxist group, or do you think it was the Prodigals of the was Prodigals of the Elders of Zion? That's a reference to a like an anti-Semitic conspiracy
right.
screed, published like almost 100 years ago, but like it's notorious for just like everything's because of the Jews, that kind of stuff. So like, yeah, where do
Well,
you think this is really coming from? Come on now, like this.
yes, this is why people who are on the left, when I was watching it, when I was reading it on the different spaces, on the different social internet socials, it made me angry because I'm like, when you look at when you look at Green's track record in the House and the policies that she voted for, when it comes to pro-Palestinian, pro anti-Israel policy, if you ranked her in Congress, she she would have been ranked at 29%. She would have her F would have been so bad that she would have had to take the grade again. Nancy Pelosi, someone they did it on. I will put in the doobly doo below, but they scored everybody. Nancy Pelosi only got a 39. You know what I'm saying? She was
Hmm.
lower than Nancy Pelosi in comparison to AOC. AOC had like an 89% approval rating when it came to policies that were positive towards Palestine and anti-Israel policies, as in giving weapons to Israel, things of that nature. Now, if you want to say AOC was wrong for going on the DNC stage and saying that Kamala and then was working tirelessly for a ceasefire, hey,
Yeah, not
I'll
bad.
give you that. I'll
Yeah.
give you that. You want to say that, hey, Rashid Tlaib and Rashid Tlaib and Ilhan Omar voted for the resolution uh that Miss Green put in place, and AOC didn't. And she should have that. And you want to make that argument that she should have did that? Hey, I'll give you that. Those are two L's. Those are two L's that you can give to AOC. Now, do
Oh,
you want to
I was
talk about?
also saying standing against the rail strike. That's probably I still remember that. That was my
No, no.
biggest Alphas.
Again, okay, standing against the rail strike. Okay, cool. Let's compare that record because again, this is about the resume. Let's compare that resume to Green. We're talking about the person who voted for every weapon package to go to Israel, who before and after October 7th agreed with Bibi Netanyahu and Trump. She stood in alignment with the Republicans and the majority of the Congress on making sure that Israel and Iron Dome will still be funded. She she only changed her mind when she started getting death threats to Trump. So this is a recent change of mind. And also notice every time that she talks about Israel, and she criticizes Trump, she never talks about the vice president. She never talks about anybody else in the cabinet. Why? Because those are people that she would still vote for. She would still support. So as much as people are giving her and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and people like them kudos for finally being on the right side. They can finally be on the right side of this argument. But those are the vampires outside of the club. If this is sinners, we don't let them in the club.
Yeah.
They can they can be on the right side outside. They
There's a
can be on.
term, progressive except for Palestine. We're actually gonna be talking about that more in a minute, but it's like here's a new term, regressive except for Palestine. And again, it's not even necessarily that these people have like, come to Jesus. It's that they have certain again, just certain picadillos. I think there was a strain of the anti-interventionist MAGA movement that was sincere. And even to people with a lot of these very troubled, problematic worldviews, I mean, everybody saw the genocide that just happened. We all saw it live stream on our phones. Even people who do very immoral things, vote immorally in Congress or say the kind of stuff that Tucker Carlson has done, are, they've seen, there are red lines that Israel's crossed and made them like reconsider on that issue. And yeah, good on that. But like, I think it brings us to a point where we had there's certain figures and like the one that comes to mind is Jimmy Dore. I mean, I know he's kind of irrelevant these days, but there's just that type of commentator that wants to like give their roses to a right winger who says the right thing once and will spend the other like half of their just dumping on every other progressive in the field. And where I kind of come from with that is, I think it is important to criticize our politicians. You look at AOC has a better stance on Israel and the Iron Dome now after being heavily criticized by the progressive left. That's what you're supposed to do. Um, at the same
Andy,
time,
I have one.
I think like it's important to understand this is just kind of me thinking as somebody who's like I know electoralism is not like the be all end all. I'm not like it's like, oh, you're like a social democrat or stuff. But I do think like getting people like AOC, getting people like Zoran Mamdani, getting people like Abdul El Said in power, that is a good barometer. It is a barometer of working class power. These type of people would not have been allowed in the halls of power 10 years ago. I mean, we literally know this. Just, you remember Bernie 2016. Um, but the fact that more of these people are getting in now, I think speaks to kind of the dwindling power of the neoliberal center and the ascendant power of these left populist politics. And whether or not you think like again, like we should, electoralism is going to do anything, or is it, I think like sometimes you miss the forest for the trees for that. I think a lot of people on the far left who think like it's revolution or bust. I mean, yeah, sure, but even in the situation we're living in kind of like the twilight of American empire, seeing that that is a reflection of again working class power at the ballot box. Now, does that need to be more radical? Do we need like again the proletariat? Yes, but I think that is a good sign of where we are versus 10 years ago. Especially again, this is the United States we're talking about. You're not going to have like a Marxist revolution tomorrow. A lot of people are still very afraid of socialism or communism and all that other stuff. I was kind of on a
Wait,
tangent there, but it's something I've been thinking about. I was kind of thinking a lot about this morning. So
no, yes, and I want to also add, AOC called what was going on in Palestine a a a genocide way before Bernie did.
that's true.
Bernie,
Yep. Hmm.
Bernie was still operating with the J Street liberal Zionist ideology. AOC actively said was one of the first people out of the gate to say we should not allow any more weapons to Israel. Now she tried to couch it by now. This is another thing you can knock her for saying. She tried to give some mealy mouth thing about offensive weapons and defensive weapons, but when Israel started attacking Lebanon and other countries as well, she was like, "Oh no, offensive weapons gotta go too. Iron Dome, Iron Dome weapons have to go too, because now they're using those weapons to attack other countries." So again, check the resume. AOC's resume is far better on this subject than some of your favorite Congress people. Your favorite representatives are not better on this issue than AOC. And if you're praising people like Tucker or Marjorie more than AOC when she's on the right side of history more times than not, then you've missed the plot. You have missed the plot. Then yes, you are very much in the same boat, like how you said about Jimmy Dore. Yeah, you're in the boat of being a tool for fascist dictators. You are a useful tool for the fascists because you are harming people who are on your side, and that is dumb.
Yep. Absolutely. So I'm thinking if we're done talking about people who are regressive except for Palestine, can we? There's this progressive except for Palestine politician I wanted to talk about for a minute. I know if you have anything else on that last topic.
I'm done. I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay.
End your business.
So this is a Michigan story. Dana Nessel is crashing out on Facebook. And I thought it was important to talk about because it exposes a few things about, again, broader Michigan politics and, of course, the politics around, this particular moment we're in and kind of the fracture of the increasingly marginalized center in the Democratic Party that still wants to be openly Zionist and everyone else, almost literally everyone else. So I'm going to read a few excerpts from this. This is Dana Nessel posting to her personal Facebook. It is crashing out. It's a little bit more eloquently written than like a Trump post or whatever, but she's doing some really insidious things here, and I wanted to point them out. So it starts out APAC, APAC, APAC. Seemingly the number one target and litmus test for Democratic candidates, even if they're running for offices that have no authority or influence over foreign affairs. Um, and I wanted to start real quick with just this again. That is diverting. Again, you were trying to say there's no connection between foreign and domestic policy. I fundamentally disagree with that. She goes on to say, which is precisely what the most powerful corporate interests want. And then I really want to pick this next paragraph. This is something else. The AI tech billionaires intentionally feed us divisive content on the Middle East to keep us divided, so that the voters will not unite on the need for regulation of companies whose products will impact every portion of our lives, from mass surveillance to what we pay for services and products to whether most of us will be employable in the foreseeable future. And while we are fighting over APAC, who else are we not uniting against? And she goes on to talk about chemical manufacturers, pharmaceutical manufacturers, healthcare insurances, insurers who deny patients, energy monopolies, homeowner and auto insurance companies that are making things unaffordable. Blah 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 blah. So let me pick apart a few things here. First of all, the idea that AI and AI tech billionaires are feeding us divisive content. Let me be very clear. The thing that made people dislike APAC was not divisive AI memes. It was seeing firsthand, on the ground footage of a live stream genocide in Gaza. That is about as organic and grassroots as you can get. And in fact, the U.S. government's gone so far in the other direction. Ban it, ban TikTok, unban TikTok. The only version of TikTok can exist is one that is explicitly censored by a right-wing media conglomerate. It's shameful um, to try to conflate those two things. Obviously, like Dana Nessel is a smart woman. She knows what she's doing with this, and she starts listing off this laundry list of progressive platform policies. And basically, the argument is she's making is that you can only apparently. If you're on the left or you're progressive, you can only pay attention to one issue at once. If you're paying attention to APAC, then you're somehow not paying attention to health insurance or chemical manufacturers, and it's ridiculous on its face. Like, okay, Lawrence. So I don't know how much time you thought about Palestine today, but do you know that's time? I don't. Perhaps you've forgotten that the North Side is a sacrifice zone to the uh, graphic packaging. That you can because you can only think about one thing at once, right, Lawrence? Like, that's like what is this?
So my issue, and again, we've seen Miss Nessel throw progressive politicians under the bus, like Rashida Tlaib, because Rashida Tlaib was also calling out calling out the genocide in Palestine, right? And also calling out the crackdown on students. This is the other thing that's not being talked about. That Miss Nessel was a part of cracking down on students that were protesting the genocide. Again, I want to give grace. I don't want to. I'm trying to give grace, and I want to give grace. Dana is proving the point that liberal Zionism does not work. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot have the ideology that 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 we can have uh, equal rights for all people. We can have equal rights for all people, and then ignore the fact that this lobbying group, APAC and APAC affiliated lobbying groups, are only here to further the interests of of Israel's agenda of being the forward operating base for American imperialism, because that's what Israel is, right? If we're talking about equal rights for all, a state with equal rights for all, right? What Mandani said, then this would be a different conversation. But Dana is putting out this information like we don't have history. Correct me if I'm wrong, but our sister state in Ohio, when Nina Turner ran, It was APAC and APAC affiliated groups that put over 12 to $15 million into her race when she
Hmm.
was winning the race, by the way, and gave it to Chantel Brown. Chantel Brown, who's taken millions of dollars from APAC and APAC affiliate groups.
And
Wait,
I think she does point out, she makes that connection. She says like APAC doesn't deserve our support. They've propped up election deniers, insurrection supporters, and officials to support the worst of Trump's agenda. But like again, you miss that connection that like APAC has been directly responsible from preventing people with progressive policies from being elected. People who would
wait,
actually fight on any of the issues you just made a laundry list about.
well, yes, yes, and right. This is the other yes and part. If I remember correctly, they did the same thing to Corey Bush, to Jamal Bowman, right? They were doing the same thing here in Michigan. APAC has donated to uh to John James and other right wingers here in this state, people who are trying to deny the election, active active uh, election deniers and people who were trying to help with the insurrection. Apex has done everything to prove, and again, they're not the only lobbying group that has done shady stuff. We talked about the oil lobby. We talk about the gun lobby. We talk about healthcare and how Blue Cross Blue Shield and other healthcare and other insurance companies have actively put money to go against progressives, right? They're no different. They're no different from any other lobbying group. They just happen to have disproportionate uh, effects on outcomes uh, uh, against people who would help your average American and who also want solidarity with people who are living in an apartheid state. I want, and this also ties back into the story with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because the policies that APAC wants to continue in Israel is what Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene want in America. And I want to remind everybody, we had that period in America. It was called Jim Crow. It was
Yes.
it was everything from 1864 to 1971, 72. That period of American history, they want to take our country back to.
So I do actually want to say, so there's one point, there's two more points in her post I wanted to kind of highlight. And there's one point I actually will agree with. She says, if Israel disappeared from the map tomorrow, the lives of everyday Americans won't be better in any discernible way. I wanted to kind of pick that apart because in a
Wait, wait,
way
wait.
she's right here because and there's this great there's this foreign kind of leftist foreign policy podcast I listened to called Colonial Outcasts, and they did a really good breakdown of this idea that like especially a lot of people on the right, the anti-Zionist right are trying to pin all of Americans' problems on our relationship with Israel. And like Jeff Goldblum said, life finds a way. The U.S. empire, if Israel did not exist as our proxy in that region, we would still be doing American empire stuff that the American empire does. We would find another vassal state, maybe patch things up with UAE or Saudi Arabia. There's the actual mechanism of U.S. empire would not fundamentally change all that much if Israel disappeared tomorrow. I mean, the granted, who knows? The current administration might just take the whole franchise down with it. Pull a Gorbachev. With the way they're dismantling the empire at this rate. But yeah, that's very much true, and I think a lot of times that's what kind of primes up a lot of the more anti-Semitic conspiracies is this idea that like if there weren't a bunch of secret Jewish people in charge, everything we'd somehow go back to like the social safety net we had in the '60s, which is just silly thinking. But another thing that's also silly thinking, and this is like their closing paragraph. It's like if you're more focused on hating APAC, Israel, and Zionist Jews than the American industries that have created a permanent underclass in the U.S., And corporate America will have gotten exactly what they're hoped for, and the AI billionaires who monetize the electorate's hatred and divisiveness will win again. Let me zoom into something that's going on concurrently. Larry Ellison is currently in the process of trying to merge Paramount Skydance with Warner Brothers. This will be the largest media merger and monopoly to ever exist in American history. This is led by somebody who is explicitly pro-Israel and Zionist, and who is towing the line of the Trump administration. Not like pushing back again, like okay, APAC is what has enabled somebody like Larry Ellison to get into the position he is in, where he can take over the entirety of like freaking American media. And it's just so disingenuous and factually incorrect to kind of talk about this. It's again like Larry Ellison is friends with all the AI billionaire like Palantir people, Peter Thiel and Jeff Bezos and all the rest. So to act like it is somehow we're siphoning energy into this issue at the expense of all the other issues is disingenuous, incorrect, uneducated, and it reads this whole thing read like the sour grapes of somebody who, again, for a long time, too long, progressive except for Palestine. Progressive except for Palestine was a tenable, if not like the popular position to have in the Democratic Party. In the space of a few years after this live stream genocide, it no longer is. And Dana Nessel seems to have a lot of sour grapes that she can no longer kind of maneuver in that position without getting criticized for it, rightfully criticized for it.
Yeah, I feel like the main issue that I have with everything that Miss Nessel was saying, in my opinion, is that we talk about reading the room, right? Reading the room. If 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 APAC and if Israel if the state of Israel wasn't actively bombing multiple countries that did not attack them first, right? Then and also wasn't subjecting the Palestinian people in the West Bank and in Gaza to Jim Crow genocide conditions, we wouldn't be having this conversation. This wouldn't be a conversation. We wouldn't even be talking about this right now. The reason why we're talking about this is because that's exactly what they've been doing. And you are actively asking people to not trust their own eyes and ears. You're actively asking people to say, "Hey, we're we're focusing on this lobbying group, and and only focusing on this lobbying group will what? Not prove the point that we've been making? If focusing on this if we don't focus on this lobbying group, should we only imagine when actively uh they are actively trying to put money into races that harm progressive or liberal Democrats? Should we just ignore the 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 policies that groups like this have? We didn't talk about it, but we didn't talk about it the other day. But last week there was a protest at a synagogue in New York, and the reason why there was a protest at that synagogue was because they were selling land in the occupied Palestinian territory. These are Jewish. These were Jewish brothers and sisters, Israeli brothers and sisters that came to New York and said, "We are selling property of those that we have bombed, that we are genociding." That is illegal under international law.
Yeah, and I think like that's a perfect example of, and then there's the same kind of sleight of hand, and we've talked about this extensively when talking about the Palestine issue of equating again protest to apartheid with anti-Semitism. She talks about in that article about hating APAC, Israel, and Zionist Jews, and that inclusion is not accidental. And I want to make it very clear. You talk to people who've been protesting this genocide over the last couple of years. I don't think hate is not the appropriate word. Anger, yes, it's appropriate to be angry at Zionists for propping up a genocidal apartheid state. But we do not, nobody hates them as individuals or for their religious beliefs. We just are, again, very sensibly angry that they are helping to perpetuate a genocide. If they, if they got right in their hearts tomorrow and decided to join Jewish Voice for Peace, there would be no reason for that anger. But no, it is absolutely right to be angry at people who are participating in a destructive ideology that is causing the death and murder of innocent men, women, and children in the thousands. That is absolutely appropriate. And yeah, conflating it with anti-Semitism is it is a old, just as tired as everything else in this post. It's not working. People are not falling for that anymore. And to the extent that anti-Semitism is on the rise, there are a lot of people in this right-wing pipeline who, and again, the more you equate being Zionist with being Jewish, that fuels that anti-Semitism, because if people take that at face value and say, well, is genocide a Jewish value then? Obviously it is not. But if you keep complaining the two, people who are more susceptible or are hearing more of these like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories in their everyday lives are going to be more predisposed to start believing that kind of nonsense.
Yeah, what a wild coincidence. You're gonna tell people that criticizing the state, government, the government and governmental policies, like I think we talked about it. I think it was over a month ago, where the state of Israel voted in mass that Palestinian prisoners can be killed, can be given the death penalty, and that settlers who are in those occupied states that does violence to Palestinians, that they can choose not to give them the same penalty. But Palestinians that choose to resist can get the death penalty. They celebrated this. They celebrated this. If that law was in America, I mean, we had laws like that in America. Uh, and we had laws like that in America during Jim Crow. I want to remind everybody the parallels between what Israel is doing to Palestinian people and what white people did to minorities uh, in this country. Those parallels, those parallels are not there for a reason. They're not. They're not. They're not just. They're not just. They're not just swimming along together like for no reason. They're one and the same. It's the same type of ideology. I I like Dana Nessel. I really do. I want nothing but the best for this woman. I want nothing but the best for her. But at the same time, telling people that we should ignore a lobbying group when they're using their influence to harm Americans would be the same thing like telling people who are harmed by Roundup, the companies that produce Roundup, from poisoning them, and we should ignore their lobbying organization because they're giving money to the Democratic Party, and that is being divisive. Would you have the same smoke if this was tobacco industry? When the tobacco industry, when people were protesting against big tobacco, right? Would you have this same smoke for the gun lobby? For when they make profits off of mass shootings? You have this issue with this lobbying group, and now since you are saying this, it makes me now want to go on Open Secrets to see how much money have you taken from these organizations.
Yeah.
So
Um, and
this is
like, like that's the thing. Like, I didn't actually look it up yet. Like, I can't tell you whether offhand Dana Nessel has taken money from APAC or not. I think Occam's razor. It's just she herself is a Zionist, and she has had to look in the mirror and get a lot of criticism from people who historically were maybe like donated to her campaign. And they're like, you are on the wrong side of this. And, she's having a really hard time uh, making
again.
that math work out. So,
We're gonna have to go to APAC tracker and gonna have to have some harsh conversations.
yeah,
But
I
again,
don't know.
I'm
Even if she
just
took no money from APAC, she's just doing it for the love of the game. Just
hey,
it's
hey, I'm just
crashing out,
saying,
crashing out for Israel.
hey, hey,
Uh,
I'm just saying, I love that woman. Let me restate it again. I love that woman. I want none but the best for that woman. I don't want, I do not want any harm to happen to her. I voted for her, right? But I need her to not just read the room, but but start stepping into lockstep with the Democratic voters and the Democratic and the voters and the policy that the people want. The people, the Democratic Party, the party that you're a part of, the voters are saying what Israel is doing is a genocide. We don't want to support it.
Also,
We're
just
not saying
don't talk to your constituents like they're stupid. Like, a lot of your course, like the people who supported you, especially in the first election, were some of the most like, prolific, progressive organizers in the state. They know how to walk and chew gum at the same time. People don't like, we can focus on more than just one issue, and this idea that people are focusing on APEC to the expense of everything else is a foolish thing to say.
yeah, pretty much.
Um, all right, so yeah, we spent a lot of time on that. Lawrence, I know. Did you want to? We did maybe like follow up on the kneecapping of the Voting Rights Act, or I'm not sure if there's anything else that you wanted to really hit on with the time we still got left.
Yeah, there's been a couple updates and stories that's been going on. Um, I don't know if you saw well, we talked about it briefly, but in Virginia, they did a referendum. The voters voted about the changing to the maps because of their counter gerrymandering, right? In the Supreme Court said, nah, we're gonna block that. Hey, you know that thing about states' rights? Yeah, y'all ain't got no rights.
So
Y'all ain't got no.
Virginia, that was about redrawing them to favor the Democratic Party. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
so
There-
gerrymandering for me, but not for thee. Is that
so basically, in the language of the referendum, they said if the red states do not do this, then we will not implement this, right? But since the red states were doing it, they was like, well, hey, y'all wanted to jump stupid. Hey, we gonna jump with you, right? And the
Mhm.
Supreme Court said, hey, Virginia, you know how you have states' rights? No, you don't. We're shutting that down. What and other Democrats across the state are saying, hey, you should do the same thing that Ohio did. Because when the Supreme Court told Ohio, hey, your maps are kind of racist and y'all need to redraw them, Ohio said, we'll take it under advisement and did it anyway. They did it anyway.
Mhm.
States like New York, California, even Michigan and other blue states, we need to actively, not just push for policy to say, hey, Supreme Court justices can only be justices until they're 55. After they're 55, they gotta retire, right? Those are good things. Packing the Supreme Court, in my
Mhm.
opinion, right now, I believe that packing the Supreme Court is more important, is the most important issue, and that we should be doing more than anything else. We talk about
Good
Medicare for all.
good example of that. So a lot of people talk about FDR and his ability to get all of these sweeping social reforms done in his tenure. And one of the things he threatened to do is the Supreme Court was going to try to stop him from doing that. He threatened to pack the court. Now, when Joe Brandon had a similar historical moment, he blinked and he made no such threats. In fact, he let the parliamentarians stand in the way. So, yeah, just
Well,
goes to show like there's a historical precedent for that.
President. Okay, to give Biden credit, he did threaten to pack the Supreme Court and have court reform. I just that everybody don't remember it because that was the same week he decided to drop out of the election.
Oh,
Right?
I totally forgot about that. That's
Right. It was
insane.
the
Yeah,
same week when he decided. So to give him credit, he talked about it, but nobody paid attention to it. Right?
yeah.
Uh, yeah. In my opinion, like I said, in my opinion, stacking the Supreme Court or in court reform is the most important thing because we care about Medicare for all, we care about universal free college, we care about living wage, I care about reparations, we care about universal housing, universal basic income. These are all policies that we talked about on the show before. If the Supreme Court just says, "Hey, y'all can't do it," then we have a problem. So we need to not just be aggressive in stacking the Supreme Court. We need to actively say, "Hey, if you're allowing red states to redraw their districts, to cancel elections. If you're saying that it's okay when Louisiana and Texas and Florida does it, then I don't want to hear you cry when Virginia and Michigan and California and New York does it. Yeah, because I want to remind everybody they had an anti-gerrymandering they had a gerrymandering legislation in the House of Representatives in saying that there will be independent bodies that will use the census and then draw maps that are fair for each state, right? It will be an independent body. You want to know who voted against that? It was Republicans.
Yeah. Hmm.
The Republicans said, "Nah, we good. We good over here. We just gonna steal it." And anybody who in to act as if that is not the case is to not see what is going on with your own eyes. And that's the issue. That, in my opinion, that is the number one issue right now. It bothers me wholeheartedly to see. I'm happy, and there's other people who's talked about this. Shout out to Secular Talk with Wakako Lindsay. Shout out to the Humanist Report with Mike Figueredo. Shout out to Jacobin and also Democracy Now! Talked about it. These are all things that they've also all talked about, right? Um, and I agree with them. I agree with them. I want to see the Democrats, and I would hope to see the Democrats act more aggressively in their countermeasures. Because laying in a chalk outline you're saying of yourself saying like, "Hey, it sucks, it sucks." The court said that we can't do it, while the Republicans are like saying, "Hey, the court said we can't do it, we're gonna do it anyway." Let them try to stop us. We need to be doing the same way. We need to act the exact same way.
That's
Because
true.
if we
You look down at like I remember we ran a story a few years. This is during the Biden years in Texas. Supreme Court said that it's like he basically had like this saw style obstacle course along the Rio Grande, and the Supreme Court was like, "Hey, you can't do that. That's like cruel and unusual." And Texas Governor Greg Abbott was like, "Well, we're going to do it. So what are you going to do?" Yeah, we need to see that kind of energy. It's like yeah. But for things that are good and not about torturing immigrants, but I hope I said that correctly.
we need to match that same energy. That's all we're saying. We just need to match
Mhm.
that same when they're this isn't this isn't a when they go low we go high. This is a when they go low we need them in the face. This is a mixed martial arts fight right now.
Or
Like we need
when
to
Abdul said something like that, we go down in the mud. I can't remember exactly
nah
paraphrasing, but
since they like since everybody understands the UFC and mixed martial arts. No, when they go low, you knee them in the face.
yeah.
You upper you uppercut. That's what you do. You hit them with uppercut.
Mhm.
Right. That's what you do. But nah, that was that story that was one of many stories. I know that we don't have a lot of time. I'm looking through our chat. Um, uh, also, oh, okay. So I want to end on a good note. I want to end on a decent note, right? Um, we like comedy. We talk about comedy all the time, right?
Hmm.
The roast of Kevin Hart was on Netflix. When I tell you that I have not laughed that hard in a while. It's a good watch. It's a good watch. But the reason why I haven't laughed that hard in a while is because there were some conservative people, some conservative comics that were also at that roast. One in particular, if you remember, I think his name is Tony Hinchcliffe. He was at the MAGA rally in New York. He's the one that said there was he said that Puerto Rico was an island of floating trash, right? Man, the things that was said about this man made my spirit. It made my spirit shout and jump for joy. Uh,
Hmm.
Pete Davidson, shout out to Pete Davidson there that he had going on. He said, I'm not gonna ruin the joke. I'm not gonna ruin the joke by saying it here. But his jokes about Tony, um, uh, uh, Chelsea Handler's jokes about Tony, Chelsea Handler saying, uh, this is why women need to vote, because Tony Hinchcliffe is what you get when women don't have access to abortions. Oh, oh,
Oh
oh,
man,
oh,
big
oh
Howard.
God. Oh,
Uh,
vicious, vicious, right? Like I'm not gonna lie. For like the first 5 minutes, I was like, for like first 5 to 10 minutes of it, I thought it was gonna be a very whack roast. But as soon as they started letting some of the Def Comedy Jam people, some of the Def Comedy Jam legends hit that stage, and then Cat Williams being a special guest, and everybody knows the beef that Cat Williams has had with Kevin Hart for the last 15 years. That was crazy, crazy. It was a fantastic show. If you have some time, if you have some time, go watch the roast. The roast is amazing. And the only reason why I'm also telling you this because Pete Davidson said a joke that has MAGA crying. Okay, I want to remind everybody that people like Tony Hinchcliffe and other conservatives have made jokes about dead people. They've made George Floyd jokes and things of that nature. Well, Pete Davidson said a joke about Tony Hinchcliffe that had Charlie Kirk involved. If I remember correctly, like he said, "Hey, um, uh, he said Tony reminds me of a lot like Charlie Kirk because just like Charlie, he has had another man unload in his throat on camera."
oh man.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Again, when I heard it, I was crying. I was crying. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because you have MAGA people, the same MAGA people that were saying, "Hey, man, um, you, we need to legalize comedy. Hey, man, these shows are going too far. Why you guys talk about Charlie Kirk?" These are the same people that was making George Floyd jokes, that was making Eric Gardner jokes, that was making Trayvon Martin jokes, crying because a joke was made about Charlie Kirk. And there's a bunch of them online that's crying right now. I want to say, hey, y'all want to legalize comedy, and this is a roast. Everybody gets it at a roast. Stop crying. Take these L's like a man.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but Joshua Watts is crazy.
So I've got one last thing here before we close out the show, and this is actually this is less a news item than kind of an announcement and a thank you. So I wanted to point out, so we are Media Ciphers, according to FeedSpot. We are the top-rated news program, news podcast in Kalamazoo, and I'm not saying that to toot my horn. It is what it is, but I do want to say that because there's this very special person in our lives that helped make that possible. Miss Pankop over at Norrix High School, I've heard, is retiring this year. They were at the helm of the nightlife newspaper for many years, which is where I cut my teeth as a 16, 17, 18-year old. Um, and I wanted to kind of just give Miss Pankop a shout out. Thank you for all your tutelage over the years. Thank you for putting up with me when I was a very opinionated young teenager who really didn't know nearly as much about the world as I do now. And again, I mentioned we're the top-rated news podcast in Kalamazoo, and me and Lawrence have pulled this off. Not through like we don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot of power. It's just it is those skills that I learned in the nightlife newsroom I have used to pull off that success here in adulthood, whether it's like knowing how to read a news brief, knowing how to call through information, knowing how to do some graphic design, all that stuff. I learned that through nightlife and Miss Pankop. So thank you so much. Or if you are not a fan of our show, it's their fault. We're doing what we're doing. Lawrence, maybe just kick it over. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I took her class. I took her class. I think either junior or senior year. I don't remember which one, but I took no. I knew. I remember it was my senior year at Lloyd Norris. I took her class, and Miss Hancock was absolutely thorough. She was honest. She was funny. Um, I enjoyed my time being in that class because she would keep it real with us. Uh, of how to analyze media in doing media analysis, right? And understanding what the writer is trying to come across, and also understanding what the writer is not saying, what they're also implying, right? And a lot of that goes into what we do now, and what we do now, for better or for worse, right? We could always be better. I do want to say I'm happy that she's retiring. I will hope that retirement, treats her well. Oh, I don't know what she's gonna be doing, but yeah, I'm happy for her.
Well, I want to close the show by saying once again, thank you, Miss Bankop. Thank everybody for listening. This has been Media Ciphers. Uh, and you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and the Media Ciphers Kalamazoo podcast. You can find on most podcasting apps. Until next time, everybody, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.